One of the greatest dangers when it comes to youth activism would be the tendency to strive towards extremism, be it for or against human rights abuses. And therefore, the question is quite specific and quite hard to answer. How important is philosophy, literature, history, and cultural studies important into developing souls, into ensuring that there is proper development and stabilization for the youth, which we would see as globally, when we're more inclined to develop scientifically, artistic qualities as such get to ignored.
My question is there any way that Malaysia can ever have free media? I mean, like, how can you do it? Because mainstream media is very important in my opinion, because that's the only type of media that can reach people in rural areas. And obviously we know that mainstream media is controlled by the government. And so they don't have internet. And so the reason why people in Selangor, in PJ, and in other big cities know about the opposition is because of the internet. And people in rural areas, they don't have internet. So how can we free mainstream media in Malaysia?
Need to have social studies of the arts. I think I'm a bit biased, of course. I'm very pro-arts education, liberal arts, philosophy, literature, cultural studies, so on and so forth. But whether it can actually temper one's radicalism or extremism, I think it's a different matter altogether. It depends on your upbringing, what you believe in. Nonetheless, I think if you're students, if you're young, this is the best time to, if you haven't read, if you're from a science background, this is the best time to get on the internet and start typing, what is, various theories, philosophy, and you can learn quite a lot. I think these days, this generation, you're very lucky. Just now I mentioned Wikipedia. I remember in the past when I was younger, I had to work, I think about 2 weeks worth so that I can afford to buy books to read, because it was so expensive at that time. Now you can actually get all this information available. If you're young, I tend to believe that if you're young, one tends to be not extreme, but radical. So you can be radical on the right, you can be radical on the left, and that's my experience. So you have radical left, so they have very, very left, pro-people, workers, opinions. And at the same time, you also have radical right, which I've personally encountered, racists, people who, for example, hate immigrants, because I was living abroad at that time. So either way, people tend to express all that, but eventually, I always believe everything comes back to the middle. So I don't think I'm as radical as before. Before I believed in, world domination, and we can change the world, and so on and so forth, we can fly. But now I'm a bit more tempered because of experience, and I guess, you mature. When you're 20, it's very different when you're 30. We all say, when you're 20, you're a socialist, you're okay. But if you're still a socialist when you're 40, there's something quite wrong, something to that effect. So arts education, liberal arts, definitely yes. So if you're in the sciences, just get on the internet, go to the library, read up. I think that's a lot of very interesting things that are coming up. Question on media. I think we need to understand the role of the media in society. Is it really to inform or to shape opinions based on the ownership of the media? So if you look in Malaysia today, who owns the media? I think you know. So you have the Media Prima group, which is essentially UMNO. You have the Star, which is essentially MCA. And then you have various tycoons who own various media, or newspapers, or electronic media. So from that, I think it is, for me, I don't think it's worth anyone's time to ask them to be free, open, and fair, because they will never be. I think it is better if we find ways to reach out. How do you get the information out to the rest of the population who's been fed, fed on the Star, fed on Utusan, Cosmo. Actually, I think Cosmo is a lot more popular, or even Harian, Metro Harian, a lot more popular than Utusan. So how do you get to that? We had quite a tough time in Selangor. I actually disagree. Not everyone is on the internet to read politics. A lot of them are on Facebook because they want to chat with some girl or some boy, enjoy, I mean, but politics is just a very small, fraction of one's online encounter. So how do we get people involved? How do we get young people involved? How do we get adults who, probably they have a smartphone, but they don't know how to use it? So in Selangor, the past 5 years, we did it the very traditional way. We printed newspapers. It's very expensive to print a newspaper. It's called Selangor Kini. It's in Malay. And we targeted specifically to the Malay community, to the rural areas. We made sure that as many as possible get a copy of it. And we actually think that that has perhaps not a very huge effect, but at least there's some positive effect from that newspaper. Internet, I think a lot more people are accessing it, especially young people. But I don't think we did look at some demographics. Basically, people who read political news, who watch political videos like mediarakyat, they are male, between 25 and 45 and 50. And a lot of them are urban-based. So again, we have to find new ways. This coming term, for example, how do we continue to reach out, improve our communications, improve our media strategy so that more people know what is actually happening here? And I still think the best form of communication is one-to-one. I mean, a lot of us have to really literally go down to the ground. We visit every house. We knock on every door. Like in my constituency, although it is in an urban setting, Bandar Utama, Bandar Sri Damansara, Damansara Damai, everyone from Pakatan Rakyat, we've knocked on each and every door of the new voters, the last general elections. We have records, we've seen them, we've touched their hands, we've given them something to at least 15,000 people. And this doesn't happen overnight, it happens over 3-4 years. So while the media is still not very fair to the opposition, I think we have to look at different ways of reaching out and giving information and also getting feedback from them. Of course, ideally, we can have a license, we can run a newspaper, but I don't see that coming up in the very near future, at least not in the next general elections. I don't see RTM giving us, how much did they promise us? 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I don't think they'll give us 20 minutes this coming election. So, same old thing, we have to do charamas. It's not easy to do a charama, but we still have to do it. We have to do it in the rural areas. We have to do it outside Klang Valley. We don't care whether it's 10 people in front of us, or 50, or 5,000. We have to do all those things. And that, I think, is still our number one strategy in terms of reaching out. So people may not support us, but they will come. They won't sit in the middle. They'll stand on the side near the warongs and the stalls, and they will listen. Whether they believe us, they want to vote for us, that's a different matter, but that's perhaps the best and the most effective way that the opposition till today is communicating, especially to the rural areas.